Hey, good morning. It is May 21st, I believe Saturday, May 21st, 2022 at almost 7 a.m. my time. Kind of a quick one just because I've got to try to get some of this out of my system once again, as I always do. Maybe in some ways, this effort to connect with you is part of my own sort of semblance of rationality in a crazy world. But God, yesterday I found out news that another friend of mine had passed away, unfortunate circumstances, and he was the third friend in the span of about 6 weeks, and most of these guys are my age, and just suddenly vanished from the earth, and it's certainly giving me more pause than ever to be like, look, we don't have a lot of time in this life anyway, and that should be the attitude we always have, but or all of us have. But for me, particularly, when I'm trying to communicate and convey to you to stimulate inside your framework and the mechanisms of your mind and your soul and your confluence of what moves you and the things that are important to you to be like, this dude Patrick Lovell is somebody that I need to connect with. I need to join. I need to follow. I need to be a part of this sort of this tidal wave resurgence that's designed and meant to purge the corruption that's destroying us all. So, I guess the starting point from for all of us should be where do you fit in the food chain? Are you self-made? Have you created your own business? Have you taken a lot of chances? Have you become successful in your own right, and you've experienced some ups and downs and the turmoil based on investing money in different places, trying to earn money? And are you dynamic, and do you have your fingers in a lot of places? Are you married to somebody who has a lot of money? How do they make their money? Do you sit on your tail all day watching? I don't know, some sort of get after day, afternoon soap opera porn. Not porn legitimately. I'm just talking about just the ridiculous nature of, television today. Do you do your yoga and stay in shape, to, please whoever the breadwinner is in your apparatus, and then, you really don't know how the world works, and you're kind of tuning in to me going, this guy Patrick's making some sense. Hopefully that's the case. Are you somebody that's, working in, I don't know, like a low income job where you're working 24 hours a day, where maybe you have a spouse that's doing the same, and you have many children that you're trying to provide for, and you're trying to get some sort of orientation towards the way the world works. We could go on and on with all of these different scenarios, but the system is the system. And look, we live at a time in an era in 2022 that's kind of a confluence of decades of developing globalism. And globalism creates supply chains, and supply chains that create different products that feed all of the things that we consume, that we use to survive and thrive, and all of those things moving forward. And I mean, a couple of things that have impacted global supply chains, of course, it was COVID going back to the beginning. But more recently, I mean, we've seen just this giant heat wave in India, which is apparently destroying a lot of wheat production. And then, of course, the war in Ukraine is sabotaging of the wheat production that impacts Central Europe. And of course, that generates all sorts of problems in different development of agricultural products that feed the world. And from what I understand, some small inflection in the price of wheat could have devastating impact, literally, on millions of people around the world. Quite frankly, and some people are concerned quite of a starvation problem. Add that on top of international contagion and virus and other challenges with this global system of this 4 decades long march to this system that has just absolutely enriched this top layer of society and decision-making process that have been able to use all of these different scenarios to basically control central banks and our central bank, the Federal Reserve, to be able to funnel money for themselves in these incredibly complex sort of schematics that they can skim off the top at every step of the way to serve themselves at your expense. And they win if they're going up, and they win if we're going down. Honestly, that it's insane. The inflation that seems to be having such a ginormous impact on markets is the result of a lot of things that came from 2019 forward, primarily Fed Reserve policy, insane stimulus in the economy because of all sorts of major issues that were taking at that time, right? Even before COVID, to be honest with you. But since COVID, I mean, it's been quite remarkable that we've seen trillions of dollars stuck, put into the system one way or the other, and it comes out in all sorts of different ways. Major liquidity for these giant monopolies that basically do stock buybacks and other skimming, like I said, and multi-dimensional chess to basically steal. And they get to loot everything with impunity. So it goes to first tier, right? The guys at the top of the pyramid that get to stuff their own pockets and then pretend like, hey, what's the problem? But when they start, creating, more demand, at least it's fictional demand in the economy, more orders, more this, more that, and then you have supply chain choke, and so it creates inflation and all of these other things that are happening that the consumer ultimately has to pay for. And then you're asking yourself, well, where did suddenly the consumer down at the bottom rungs, if you fit down, let's say in your low income wage worker and you work forever, many hours a week, and maybe you've seen some increase in your hourly, but at the same time, all of the other costs of goods and services have gone up, so you're at a net loss, right? So it's like, okay, well, that didn't help me. Not to mention real estate and apartments and all of those types of things that have gone, through the roof. Those are called assets, and assets primarily feed, the portfolios of the upper crust. And the upper crust have been able to manage, well, let's basically pacify the top 10%, because the top 10% are ones that have had excess capital, be able to invest, and they had jobs and good paying jobs to do whatever they did. So the last 13 years has been a relative bull market for them. So they're like, what's the problem? Meanwhile, everybody else is basically skating on thin ice, and one major move going the wrong direction creates this incredible collapse all across the board. And what I've been trying to convey to you nonstop, and what we reveal on the con, and you might want to consider, honestly, that what we reveal on the con during the great financial crisis, that everybody, and I mean everybody, from Crystal Ball and Sager and Genti, they act as if they know what the hell's going on. They don't. They know a sliver, maybe at best, of what it is that we expose in the con and what I've actually got on the shelf after years and years of research and being in the mix of it all. But that goes for, my God, I was watching Russell Brand the other day, and that guy just blows my mind from the standpoint that, he's just got this incredible gift of gab, this incredible knowledge of, vocabulary, and an amazing way to put it all together in a way that few have that capacity. But he doesn't, and he's incredibly smart, and he's incredibly witty, but the bottom line is he doesn't understand the freaking facts. And it's just so frustrating to watch guys like him and Joe Rogan, who've got access to all sorts of guests. They're all digging in the wrong place. Like my favorite quote from Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, my favorite film of all time, when the Nazis had the wrong information because of asymmetric information, because of the Staff of Ra, they were looking for the Ark of the Covenant in the wrong place, and Indiana Jones had the information. That's what I'm trying to convey to you, is that most of what affects everything that you experience and whatever food chain that you're, living, is that where you fit in the food chain is based on asymmetric information. Most of us are just getting some sort of the story, but not the full story. And you don't understand the world you actually live in. And the thing that controls everything is corruption. Because the guys at the top of the apex, the guys that are the asset managers, the private equity funds, the hedge funds. You just look in the Fortune 500 of this last year, I think a vast majority of them come from the financial sector, and they just get to loot the freaking free money policy from the Federal Reserve. So what you've got to look at is, if, let's just say, the stock market is collapsing, and then suddenly, maybe 2 or 3 months, it's like a lead indicator, and 2 or 3 months from now, we start to have devastating impacts on the global economy, which we're going to have because there's going to be a recession, because the Federal Reserve is going to create they're going to do quantitative tightening. Supposedly they're not going to be buy back the bonds process programs that, these son of a bitches at the apex of our financial system have been able to loot with impunity for 13 years, because you don't know how it works. So they made trillions of dollars. They already walked away. The big billionaires on the top of the food chain, they sold and put cash in their pockets 6 months ago. Okay, so they're not impacted. Yeah, supposedly Amazon and Elon Musk and so forth have lost billions of dollars over the course of the last couple of days, weeks, whatever. Don't feel sorry for them. They cashed out at the top of the market. This is just on paper, man. Anyway, when the economy goes south and billionaires lose half of their wealth, well, compare that to everybody else who has, whatever percentage in no buffer. Right? So what's a 50% hit to somebody worth $65 billion versus what you are when you can only live, paycheck to paycheck? It's insane. And so you keep going, well, wait, aren't these just a confluence of natural factors? Because, this is the way it works. It's like nature, right? You're going to have earthquakes, you're going to have hurricanes, you're going to have bad weather. And if you get caught in a tornado, hey, bad luck, right? No, man, this whole thing is freaking designed. And it's designed because these guys have had 4 decades to get it right. And you got to think of it as like Gotham. You got to think of it like Batman. You got to think of it, these guys have got every corner freaking nailed, and it's a casino for themselves. And they get to loot with impunity, and then they get to buy our government, and then you have these fork-tongued, politicians on both sides of the aisle that are part of a duopoly that are basically pissing on your head and telling you it's rain, and you're at a loss. You don't know where to go. You're stranded. There's nothing you can do to help yourself, and maybe you just got blitzed in the losses in the latest tulip bubble craze, which was crypto. Maybe you're like, God damn, I was worth like $200,000 last week, and I was about to put that down on this house and go to Miami and everything else. Now I got nothing. All of a sudden, you're going to go through this turmoil like I did back in 2008. In fact, that was almost the exact same situation I was back in 2008 with the housing bubble, man. I had my job, I had my business, I had my house, I had my family. Everything looked like it was going in the right direction. Then all of a sudden, whammo, and my life got turned upside down, inside out, and it's taken me this long to figure out what the fuck actually happened. And that's why I'm coming to you day in and day out to tell you, listen to me. We've got the evidence that nobody is willing to bring to you. Not the New York Times, not the Washington Post, not Russell Brand, not Crystal. None of these people have the entirety of the story. And what it comes down to is we have got to reconfigure the United States government to be what you actually think it is. Of, by, and for the people, where no man or company is above the law. That's what you think we are. We're not. We've got to create what we show in the kind, the professionals that come out of the FBI, the DOJ, the SEC, the guys that are on the right side of this, that have to come up above with a groundswell of people that overcome the lies and the deception of these, double-speaking politicians that tell you what you want to hear and then behind the scenes go and basically, stroke the guys in the shadows to give them everything they want at your expense. It's a sabotage, man. Like the Beastie Boys once said, listen, all y'all, it's a sabotage. Don't you want to fucking live in a world that makes sense? Don't you want to live in a world where you can teach your kids to do right and actually in a world where there's right? Look, I can tell you right now, we all know that there's industries across the board, whether it's airlines, whether it's shipping, whether it's our internal transportation, whether it's supposedly policing and all that sort of things, where things are supposed to work a specific way, where things are supposed to happen a specific way, where if you get outside the lines and you break the rules, there are different degrees of, consequences, right? That's what the whole purpose of the law is. But could you imagine, for example, working in an airline and looking the other way while somebody was going to put some sort of explosive device on an airplane, and then you find out later on that airplane was going to profit when everybody blew up and died in a violent, fiery wreck to hell? Wouldn't that piss you off? Well, that's what they're doing to you every single day. And it's not metaphorically. They're physically doing it to every chance that you don't have to live in a society of fairness and honesty, where you go and buy goods that are supposed to be the goods that you have for the price that are based to market, where the guys that are operating those companies are basically working a free market situation with consequences. So they have to make decisions that are going to be the right ones for the market, and they know they're going to be held accountable if things go sideways and they do wrong. But that's not what we have. We have the perverse inverse, upside down, inside out of that. It's corruption all day, every day, and you're none the wiser until you get wise to the game. You check out The Con, www.thecon.tv. Like and subscribe at Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs The Con. Get behind me. Share your comments. Spread the word. Spread the gospel. We've got, we're building a movement to bleed into the Justice Party. We've got to create literally revivals across the United States where people come under one tent. Doesn't matter what ideology it is you have. Doesn't matter what race or gender or religion or creed or what all. You come to understand the facts. You got to understand the facts of how these guys have been stealing trillions upon trillions of dollars to build their own islands and their own gates and their own electronic surveillance and their own security and they got to own the United States without even lifting a finger to be able to take it over. They did it with complicity with the smartest people in this country because everybody loves to get paid. And everybody's it can be bought. It blows my freaking mind that you're still sitting on your hands. Join us. Get hip to the game. Let's do this. Onwards and upwards.